So when looking at genre revenue growth in the US, we found that mobile action games, which includes titles like Genshin Impact in our taxonomy, grew revenue by 69% year over year.
As you know, in mobile gaming, you win with data. Usually, it's your own data. It's the data about how your marketing is going, but it's not just your data. Sometimes you need data from others. You need environmental data, vertical data, all that stuff. Welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored. My name is John Kutsier. My co-host, of course, is Peggy and Salts. And today we are again digging deep into data, not just your marketing results or your ad campaign data, but data about the digital world, your space, your vertical, your competitors. Peggy, who are we chatting with today?
Well, John, we're continuing our world tour of data companies, data company number 2 in our series. We touched down in Europe, and our guest is Craig Chapple. He's Mobile Insights Strategist, EMEA, at SensorTower, where he shares analysis on mobile apps and games market in particular, because he was before senior editor of mobile games at the website pocketgamer.biz and influencerupdate.biz. He's a frequent speaker, and he's here to speak with us today. John, welcome, Craig. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I'm really looking
We
forward
are
to it.
really pumped to have you, and we have to start here. I mean, you're at PocketGamer. You're literally getting paid to play games and talk about them. And I know there's lots of sniping from why didn't you play that game, or why didn't you do that one, or boy, you suck at playing that game, that sort of stuff. But why'd you switch?
Yeah, I mean, just firstly, like I have always loved journalism. I studied journalism for 3 years. Then I was really lucky to my first job. I've always wanted to work in games, but I thought I was going to be working in newspapers. And then I was so lucky that I didn't even know, like a town over from me was Develop magazine, a UK games industry trade magazine. So I did that for years. Briefly went into marketing, Nintendo, and then Pocket Gamer. And then an opportunity kind of turned up for SensorTower, which really excited me because actually it uses a lot of the skills that I already have. I joke, but sometimes it's kind of like the same job. I'm writing about mobile games, but now obviously I'm using the data specifically from Sensor Tower, and that was always kind of my favorite part of writing stories, and not just the investigations, which I love, but using like data and kind of going deeper into it and finding out the real interesting insights that you could kind of bring to people, and so they could actually learn something from that.
So, a strong background in data, and I know you from Pocket Gamer because I used to work with you, Craig. You understand both sides. If you look at it and you'd want to talk to mobile marketers now, thinking about data, I mean, what does that daily, balanced, healthy diet of data look like these days?
I would just say make sure you're keeping yourself informed all the time. Obviously, working at Sensor Tower, I'm using data always, and I'm constantly investigating how games and the wider market is performing and looking for interesting angles for content. So I think the best thing you can do to really get the meat, if we're going with that theme, really get the meat out of data is kind of keeping track of industry sites. So obviously pocketgamer.biz, plug that where I used to work. But you've also got gamesindustry.biz, GamesBeat, many others, Game Daily. And then as well as that, reading reports from various data companies out there who are always tracking industry trends and looking to provide insights. And then also keep track of, if you can, financial reports, or at least, the stories covering those. And it's this stuff that all together with the data really builds context and forms the foundation for how you can interpret it. So I think like without that knowledge, data can be random and misunderstood. But without the data, you're just making decisions based on your own experiences and biases. So you need both together.
I like that. And you actually have to keep that up to date, right? Because I think things change. A pandemic hits and patterns change, and what people like changes, all that stuff. Obviously, you're big into games. You came from Pocket Gamer. What are you seeing right now? What are the key drivers of game success today?
I think some of the stuff I'll probably answer to that might be fairly obvious to a lot of people, but they're important to know. I think clearly one of the biggest drivers, particularly on mobile, is live ops or games as a service, which is obviously increasingly bigger on PC, for certain types of titles. I think there's an expectation now from consumers that games will receive like a constant stream of new updates, such as new levels and features, as well as events. And this fuels engagement and increases retention for the long term, and really is a major reason why the world's top grossing mobile games have stayed at the top for so long. Like, I'm sure when you see the monthly charts, over the course of a year, they rarely change. It's almost the same games all the time. And then that might disappear for a little while, right? So really takes a long time to get there. Social, obviously important. That's from simple leaderboards, adding something like a competitive nature, and giving you something to aim for, right up to being part of a clan, sharing goals and rewards, or, just playing together in real time. I think outside of mobile, even single player games now, like Elden Ring, though obviously From Software has been doing this kind of feature for a long time in the Souls, Bloodborne games. But they do a great job of, it's a single player game with many social elements. There'll be messages left for people, usually telling you to jump off a cliff, which I don't appreciate.
In the game.
Oh yeah,
yes, in the game.
To be fair, you get a lot of good tips from random messages, but sometimes they just drive you the wrong way. But it really adds to the world, and like it makes it kind of more fun, which is really what you're trying to do. And so generally when you're building a long-lasting games, I'd say these are the pretty standard requirements. As always, kind of depends what type of title you're making. But in the end, you could have all of that, but if your game isn't fun, then it doesn't really matter.
So almost a segue here, because speaking of fun, you're looking at trends, you're looking a lot at what games companies need to be looking at, but you also do your own research to a great extent, Craig. You've looked at and worked on your own taxonomy of themes and genres in games. Tell us about that. Walk us through that.
Yeah, so we've had our own game taxonomy for a while now, and we're constantly looking to add to it and improve it. Basically, we've gone through and categorized games into our own defined genres, which when we were first putting it together, shout out to Deconstruction of Fun, we were putting it kind of together with them. So people can search for categories that are just more relevant to how the industry kind of categorizes games, as opposed to how, the App Store, Google Play, the categories that they offer, which still have their place, but it's, I think the industry is just a bit more granular, perhaps, than that offers. And so, yes, so we've added, but since then, we've added additional layers. So you can now look at themes, settings, camera point of view, art style, IP descriptors. Sorry, I could go on, but yeah.
You should go on. It's interesting.
We're also now looking at monetization descriptors, which I'd be happy to go into at some point. So that's launching soon. We're kind of putting together a report on that. I could leap into some of the data right now.
Do you can literally jump in, because it's about animals for one thing. I mean, this is a taxonomy that went so far into depth. I was looking at it thinking, really? Insects, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have to define them some way. So we come up with our own kind of taxonomy of themes, settings, etc. So I put together in January and maybe early February a couple blog posts to kind of see, okay, throughout the whole of 2021, comparing that to 2020, I focused on the US, which are like the fastest growing themes or genres, and then also which ones are actually, but from that, also which ones are actually making the most money, because sometimes fastest growing might tell you of a new trend, but maybe it's actually a small genre, right? So when looking at genre revenue growth in the US, we found that mobile action games, which includes titles like Genshin Impact in our taxonomy, grew revenue by 69% year over year. And then that was followed by Hypercasual and tabletop. So I'm only talking about player spending, not ad spending, just to be clear. And puzzle, though, was the largest category by player spending. It picked up $5.1 billion. It's just in the US. Followed by casino and strategy. Interestingly, when I looked at downloads, every single genre saw a decline overall of installs year over year in the US in 2021. You can obviously put that down to, so 2020 just saw outsized growth.
Yes.
Obviously, because of sorry to bring it up, but the pandemic and the lockdowns. So 2021 couldn't quite match that, but overall revenue's up for most genres.
I have to dig into this because you've mentioned some of the taxonomy stuff, but I've got these notes here, and you got taxonomies around animals, around insects. What's going on there?
Yeah, I mean I think that one, that's largely driven by, so that increased that theme, animal insect as we call it. So we have animal as like a general kind of descriptor, and then we also narrow it down. So in this case, we have animal insect. Yeah, but but it really means you can get granular level. But in this case, yeah, that theme just saw like a really like a 10 times increase in revenue, largely led by a single game. I think it was about 89%, 90% of the revenue. The Ants Underground Kingdom. After that, after Animal Insect, you've also got fashion, which I think is perhaps a more interesting one because there's more games doing that, and I'd say that's actually like a real trend. You've got games, I think, High Heels, which I think is from Zynga, and then you've got Project Makeover from Magic Tavern App Lovin', and that, I think that's a theme with a real trend. It also shows when you look at this data, you really do have to look deeper into the games that are driving it, because if you saw, oh, insects is the fastest growing theme, we'll use that for our next game. But it's only one game that's actually driving that. So you really need to look carefully at all of it.
Yeah, I almost don't know what to do with that. Bugs are big. Our next game has to have bugs. Which should we do? Ants or bees, beetles? Let's go to SensorTower and see, which insect is the hottest bug for our next game. It may not get that granular, and you know what? Some of those things may be incidental. But maybe one thing that is less incidental and maybe more fashion driven, which is apropos of what you were just talking about, art styles also go through trends and seasons. What's hot right now?
Yeah, so the top grossing art style last year was 2D cartoon. So that includes titles like Candy Crush Saga and Coin Master, and that generated about, combined altogether, $12 billion in total in the US. And then that was followed by 2D realistic and 3D realistic. And meanwhile, the fastest growing art style by revenue was neon, which includes titles like Beatstar by Space Ape, which is pretty cool, and Tiles Hop, that's by Amatones.
Peggy, I never would have thought
No.
that somebody would be tracking revenue in mobile games by art style. It's kind of blowing me away. How quickly do those trends change? How quickly do they turn over, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I guess some trends are long lasting, some change quite quickly. When I did like a similar report in 2020, and I looked at the time just Q1 to Q3, and obviously 2020 is like a weird year. But at that time, I think the fastest growing theme, for example, was actually post-apocalypse, of all things.
Shocker.
Can't make it up. But it's kind of weird because games are really like an escapism, but I guess people were escaping in that way while they're at home. So, and then I think over the last couple of years, fashion has become bigger, and you can kind of see that happening. So yeah, they changed quite a lot. And actually, one interesting thing that I saw, these are the things that I find really interesting, it was that Small Giant Games, they were soft launching Puzzle Combat, which is kind of like Empires and Puzzles. and initially their theme was something like modern military or military. And I don't know the decision-making process behind that, but they had a change, and it's now like more of a zombie game. So clearly, to me, it seems like they've looked at their soft launch data. Maybe they've looked at what's popular in the market, seeing zombie games are on the rise, or just popular in general, and decided that's appropriate for their game. So they actually kind of changed it a bit, and then they got to the point where they could go into global launch. So, as ridiculous as it might be when you get really granular, this kind of data actually can really help inform your own data, or just even when you're just concepting and thinking of, okay, what's the best kind of theme or art style or for our type of game.
So we just get a free tip here then, because I was going to say, well, how do we apply this? And now we hear it. So basically,
Right.
you want to hit the money. It's a neon bug game, right?
With zombies.
That was so yesterday, John.
Now, zombies are always big because guess what? It's guilt-free violence.
Everyone loves a zombie game. So many of my favorites: Left 4 Dead, Last
There
of
you
Us.
go.
I don't know, many.
Yeah, there's one zombie game that keeps targeting me with their playable ads, and I have to place like machine guns, and there's a zombie horde attacking my castle or whatever, my house, and I don't even know what the name is. But yes, zombies are always hot, Peggy.
That's it. So we have an idea of the genre, of the art style. I want to look at profitability. I mean, what is happening in the games that are really making the money? Maybe you can pick some winners and losers here, Craig.
Oh, that's a bit risky for winners and losers. I guess I could start by just kind of giving the background of kind of what happened in 2021. So I think more people than ever are spending more money on mobile games. At least that's what our data is kind of showing. So last year, there were 8 titles that generated more than $1 billion globally across the App Store and Google Play. I'm not including third-party Android stores such as those in China there. But yeah, and that's compared to 5, which is still a big number, in 2020. So the market is growing very quickly, I would say. And we estimate overall that the global games market generated $88.6 billion from player spending, again across the App Store and Google Play in 2021, which was up 11% year over year, which was slower than 2020, but the reasons that we've kind of explained of why 2020 saw such a fast rise. So the winners and losers, which everyone clearly wants to know, I guess in my opinion, some of the games. So I mean, Genshin Impact was obviously probably the big winner. New launch, brand new IP. Although I think they were building like if I'm correct, like the anime a bit before that. But that's still like a brand new IP built in China, and it's now global success. And you can't even say that it's like a global success and it's all that revenue is in China, the highly lucrative market. It is all over the globe, which to me, $2 billion in 1 year, new IP.
That's big.
It's crazy, and I think it really shows like China. The publishers there are now very much global-facing companies that can create hit titles around the world. You've got PUBG Mobile, which I appreciate. It's like an IP from South Korea, but Chinese developer. And then what else have you got? Obviously Genshin Impact, and then you've also got Call of Duty Mobile, right? Activision, but developed in partnership with Tencent's Timmy Studio. And then you've got some other, I think, big shooters that are basically US publishers partnering with China. So that's a big winner. I think another one, I still think, is Pokemon Go. Is a big winner.
Amazing. Incredible. It's a zombie. It's unkillable.
Again, a popular theme. But yeah, like 2020 could easily have not been as successful as it had been, which it had been a very successful game prior. But they released some key updates to make it easier for people at home. But also, I think actually that maybe it kind of helped in some ways. I don't know if helped support word, but caused Pokemon Go to even be a bit more successful, because people couldn't do anything, and the few times they could go out, they might choose as an activity. Pokemon Go actually really suited. But yeah, full credit to Niantic, and they've continued it into 2021. They made, according to our estimates, $1.3 billion just from player spending globally. So, big winner. Losers.
Yeah, I was gonna say losers. We get all the billionaires. Here's the billionaire.
Yeah. I'm probably going to cheat with this one, but I it's kind of a winner, and we'll see how it goes. I think we've yet to see the grimly forecast, death knell, if you like, to put it dramatically, of hyper-casual games. Doesn't seem to have happened, but I think, how publishers navigate this in future, and the App Store and Google Play might continue to kind of shape their rules and regulations, maybe enforce some of those new rules a bit more for everyone, then that could prove quite challenging over the next couple of years. But I guess we'll see.
I guess we will see. And it's also a little bit of confirmation that even when the environment changes, the ecosystem changes, that doesn't necessarily change people's behavior. They still get those apps, they still play those apps. Of course, if app discovery changes significantly, as you mentioned, over the next couple of years with additional enforcement, maybe private relay, maybe iOS 15, getting extensions there, all that stuff, we will have to see. You do have a report coming up on monetization trends. We're looking for a sneak peek. What's coming up?
Yeah, so that's going to release soon. It may even release this week. I don't know when this is going out, but
you're writing it, Craig.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got new monetization descriptors which go into our game intelligence platform, which is part of our basically kind of our taxonomy. And the report's being put together by my colleague Francisco, and he's found some amazing insights. I think I find this stuff just fascinating all the time, just games in general, and I guess the drama you can kind of get out of games. But yeah, there are a bunch of findings. So one of the areas we look at are NFT and crypto games. Now, obviously, there are limited number of those because of the rules of the App Store and Google Play. But and love them or hate them. But what's interesting in these titles is that currently they have kind of a diverse range of what we call classes. So kind of a level up from genre. And so we're talking about mid-core and casual. There's quite an even split between NFT and crypto games that are mid-core and casual. So I think from that, my takeaway is that it kind of reflects early experimentation to find the best audiences for those games, whereas other monetization methods are probably a bit more sewn up in mid-core or casual, right? So for example, ad removal, it's kind of it's a casual monetization method, really. Elsewhere, we analyze the top 10 revenue generating games in the world by monetization type. So the world's top 10 revenue generating mobile titles across App Store and Google Play all use live ops. I mean, it's obvious when you say it, but you can see it. And then meanwhile, half of the world's top 10 use some form of season pass, which has obviously become more and more popular across genres, as we kind of look at in the report. And then gacha, which we know is obviously particularly popular in Asia, has also become more prominent in the US. But even more interesting is we found that out of the top 10 gacha games in the US last year, half of them are IP based. So this includes titles like Star Trek Fleet Command, Marvel Strike Force, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, Contest of Champions. This is perhaps due to particular IPs having a deep roster, or these particular IPs, having a deep roster of existing notable characters that can kind of provide a good foundation for success with gacha monetization system. So those
Very
are some
cool.
of the sneak preview takeaways. But yeah, we hope to have that released soon.
Very, very cool. I'm interested in the Web3 and crypto stuff. We won't get into that anymore, but I know that's also super controversial. I know that some development teams have almost revolted against their publishers, against their companies, their houses, because they don't want to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see what we have heading into 2022 and beyond. We always end here, top 3 tips. And so we'll ask you from a data perspective, what are your top 3 tips for mobile gaming marketers in 2022?
So I guess I'm kind of looking at it from content marketing as opposed to, marketing like user acquisition and all of that. So, but some of my tips, I think, is that when it comes to content marketing, if you're using your data to tell a story or whatever kind of company you are, let the data or the expertise that you're trying to show do the talking. So when I used to work as a journalist and develop magazine or PocketGamer, both trades publications, we quite often get sponsored content come in. And honestly, I think the worst thing that you can do as a marketer is to talk about yourself. Or like put your logo as the image that some people insist. Like the second you put your logo as the image, no one will read it.
Yep.
A classic
Click
thing
through disappears.
Any story, don't put a logo. And I think the point is you should respect people's time, teach them something, and then you'll build the reputation that you're trying to build. And through that expertise, you should be able to gain customers because they think, oh, okay, these people know what they're talking about. What they've said is useful, and I guess that means their platform or whatever is what I'm after. So that's my first tip. Secondly, it's obvious, but I kind of mentioned it earlier, but just keep up with industry news, either again through data company reports, trade websites, again, like games industry, PocketGamer, and play some games. I think it's painfully obvious sometimes in marketing. It's something you can even see down to like the terminology that's used in the content. When teams or the person writing it isn't really aware of what's going on in games and have just kind of a basic understanding of the market. So I think, you benefit a lot just from doing, first, when you log on in the morning, just read the headlines each day, and if you get time, I know work takes up all our time and other things in our lives, but if you can, just find some time to play some quick, mobile games or something. Just make sure you've got that knowledge. So when you come to write something, it makes sense for the industry that you might be targeting. And lastly, take a look at a few journalistic skills that you can adapt to your content marketing. I could go down to basic stuff, even like a news triangle, right? But, even in what might be considered as dry B2B content, there's always a way to find like the drama element of fun in it. So journalists are really good at doing that. And, if you can use those skills, you can make your content marketing even better.
Excellent. And it's not that hard to find headlines that are relevant now, right? Because gaming is everywhere. I'm just going to say the word Netflix and leave it with that. No matter what you're reading about games, brands and games. Absolutely. Excellent. Excellent advice.
Excellent, Craig. Well, thank you so much for taking this time. We really do appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. We've had 2 sessions now focused on data and data companies, and I think I've learned something in both of them, and not just something, a few something. So do appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks so much, Craig, and also for sharing the more granular look at the games. Games marketers, if they're looking at it that way, you're getting an idea for product, you're getting an idea for marketing. We understand what flies, what fails. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.